I would like to talk this morning overall about the general philosophy behind the budget and of course the thrust of the budget. Most of it, you would see the announcements that have taken place has not deviated from the policies that had been put in place now quite a few years ago. We have maintained the general philosophy. We have not, for example, carried out any radical changes to the tariff structure, to the various incentives that have been given, but whatever incentives have been given or expanded, in fact, further facilitates that focus of government over the past few years. Overall, of course, just talking about the estimates itself, nearly about 2% of the deficit is towards the rebuild effort. So you have in excess of $205 to $210 million that's directly going towards the rebuild effort. About $130 million of that goes towards the rebuilding of schools. There were in excess of 225 schools that were damaged. So the rebuild has to go towards the building of schools, and as the Minister for Natural Disaster Management will tell you, that many schools in Fiji are used as, in fact, evacuation centers, and therefore we had a lot of these schools come evacuation centers that were also destroyed. The balance of the $70 to $80 million goes towards the rebuilding of many of the Irish crossings, the bridges. We were lucky in the sense it did not, Cyclone Winston did not hit Suva or Nasinu as it was originally. That was the trajectory it was on. If it had, we would have had to get a bigger catastrophe on our hands. So none of the major roads as such were damaged, but many of the inland roads, there were a lot of slipways that got washed away, underslips, overslips, Irish crossings, approaches to bridges got washed away, in particular in the interior of Ra, places like Tavyuni, southern parts of Banua Levu, and of course some parts in Tailevu and also Ba. So there is that rebuild effort going towards that, and the rest of it is to do with public buildings, nursing stations, health centers, civil servant quarters, agricultural stations. All of that needs to be rebuilt. So in excess of 2%, our GDP, of course, is approximately $9.8 billion. About $100 million is 1% of the deficit. So if you're looking at about $210 million, you're looking at about 2%. Strangely enough, whilst the opposition, and I have to say this, whilst the opposition wanted us to have a smaller budget, in all their submissions in the debates, they actually wanted $300 million added on to the budget, which is kind of contrary. But I think that also shows the sense that people need to focus on the rebuild effort. The point, though, is when you do have such a cyclone, the idea is not to stop all the other functions of government. The idea is not to stop our focus on thinking of new ways of continuation of expanding our economic base. And that really has also been the focus. So, some people may say, well, why are you, for example, investing in this, manufacturing zone that we want to develop in the West? Why are you, for example, continuing with the first home buyers program? Why are you continuing to, for example, put up new buildings for government? All of this has to continue because it not only shows that there is normalcy, but it also ensures that other facets within the economy continues to move. We cannot stop still. We have to move forward. So that has been the general thrust of the budget, notwithstanding the fact we're spending about 2% of it in the rebuild effort. The overall budget, as you know, continues with many of the social agenda programs such as free education. We've expanded on the toppers, which is good news also for many of the business houses, because we've said now with the expansion of it to 630 students who want to go into non-science areas will be able to access that too. There's been a huge call for that. So that's an expansion in that area. We've also continued with our expansion of the pension scheme. Many of you may not know this, but there are literally tens of thousands of Fijians who don't have access to FNPF. Many of them have lived in rural areas, they've been farmers, they've been villagers, they sell coconuts by the roadside, and they've done that for, for their entire lives. So as they get older, they don't have any access to any form of social security. So we introduced social security on very modest $50 a month for those people who are over the age of 70. It's now come down to the age of 66. So of course greater allocation needs to be made. On the other hand, we're continuing with free education, as I mentioned, free medicine. We give subsidized electricity for those people or households that earn less than $30,000, use 95 kilowatts of electricity, and we subsidize half of that, which is 17 cents of the 34 cents per unit that one pays. We also provide households less than $30,000 about 90,250 liters of free water a year, based on 5 people per household, average of 5 people per household, and those calculations are made from the WHO requirement, saying that we need approximately 50 liters of water each a day, right from washing, cleaning, bathing, etc., and also to drinking. So those reforms do continue. Also at the same time, though, we have provided a number of incentives for business houses. But prior to that, we also urge the business community to take advantage of the fact that we've given some very wonderful tax incentives for the hiring of university students or students at technical colleges. So workplace programs. Just to explain that to you, and it would be really quite good if business houses could actually advertise out in the public space that they want to recruit people under this scheme. And let me highlight the three, 4 areas. One of them, of course, you get a 300% tax deduction if you hire a person with disability, and if you employ them for 3 years. The point of this is this, in one of the submissions, as your MC highlighted, we had widespread consultations. We came across a not young man, he's in his probably 30s or 40s, who is completely deaf. Intellectually, physically, all fine. He simply just cannot hear. He worked at a printery shop. The requirement of the job was not for him to be able to hear to do the job properly, execute it to 100%. So he did not need that faculty. But the point is, he was not paid the same wage rate as all the other people who could hear. And when he wanted to, for example, go, if he got sick, he got ill, they would say, well, we're not going to pay you sick leave. The point is, we've also met so many people who, what we consider disabled, who are completely astute and more astute than probably many of us in this room. Yet, we are depriving ourselves of that particular contribution by this group of people. So it, in fact, in a way, deprives us of our growth in GDP, deprives us of good people who can contribute to the growth of GDP. So that's normal. Purely from an economic financial perspective, we don't look at it from that perspective. Leave aside the moral and ethical argument and right not to be unfairly discriminated. The second one, of course, is that what we call the workplace program. In the books it's written as apprenticeship, but we don't want to call it apprenticeship. In the law it's actually called workplace program, where we have now with the growth of technical colleges, there will be now 13 technical colleges coming on stream. Now, many of the courses that are available in these technical colleges, as part of their coursework, it's a requirement for them to actually go and do some practical or workplace work. So what that means is that we want more employers to be able to hire these people, for them to be able to complete the certificates. But apart from that, and apart from them helping to understand what's happening out in the practical sense and what are they being taught in the classrooms, it also gives them that work experience that will give them a better placing once they actually want to formally go out and work. So if you are able to give these workplace positions to these students or people who are technical colleges, some maybe at universities, you get a 200% tax deduction on the salary you pay them. Of course, the salary you pay them must meet with the legal requirements. The other one is, of course, which is also quite new, is if, for example, there's a student who may be doing a full-time degree at FNU or USP doing accounting, and they go to Michael Lee Joy and say, look, I have my lectures from Monday to Thursday, and I've got Friday free. Can I come and do some work at your accounting firm? Or they go to CJ Patel and can I do some book entry? Now, whatever wages you pay them, you can also claim 200% tax deduction. So when that person completes their accounting degree or diploma or what have you, when they go and apply for a job, they can actually say, I've got work experience. And they would have had work experience. So this is again, upskilling our people, giving them the skill sets, access to skill sets whilst they're studying. Now the other one, of course, is the tax deduction when you employ somebody it's their full-time employment. So you again get a 200% tax deduction on them. So even the person who's worked part-time, when they work full-time for the first time, you also get a 200% tax deduction on that. The other one is that if somebody's working for you, you think they're very good, and they're an asset to your company, and you want to upskill them and send them to, say, part-time studies or doing a diploma or degree, you can again claim 100%, 150% tax deduction on the fees that you pay for them to get that qualification. So you can see the focus that we've got in respect of creating not just giving people education, but also giving them access to employment. And we sincerely hope that the various business houses will actually advertise and say, look, government has made this, provided all these incentives. We want to hire X number of people under these schemes. So, insurance, maybe some people want to do some part-time work on a Saturday. And you could have people, carrying out various data processing, data migration, data entry, it may be. So again, this, gives them that opportunity for also access to funds. I mean, it does feed in. If these people have access to funds or money that they would not normally have, of course they'll go and spend it too. Then they contribute to paying VAT. These things, churn along, and that's one of the areas that we've highlighted. Again, you'll see we made a lot of amendments to, fast-track matters, and also to ease the burden on investors too. For example, the tax-free region regulation changes, we made announcements on that. The law was that it was very, very strict. You could not, for example, even the minister could not extend the time of the fixed time of the, if they wanted an extension on the duties and the duty excess, we could not extend that. So now the law will provide for the minister to have the ability, upon the recommendation of the various agencies, to extend that period, because there may be odd reasons as to why people cannot start their development. Cyclone Winston, for example. So as a result of that, we can have that latitude to be able to give them that extension. Of course, these applications need to be genuine. The CEO of Investment Fiji also talked about various processes. We've had people, on the other hand, who have abused their presence in Fiji, whether they've gone outside the certificate that has been given to them, the foreign investor certificate, or whether there may be instances that people who may want to come to Fiji, they could pose a risk. So it gives the CEO the ability to escalate that matter up to his board and also up to the minister. There are various other matters that we've also dealt with. We've corrected a few lacunas in the law regarding, for example, service turnover tax, environmental levy. It's not an extension per se to new areas, but it's to capture some people who may have been actually left out when the intention was actually to make sure that they got caught by the STT environmental levy or needed to pay that. VAT refunds, some of you would be very much interested in that. As you know, that if VAT refunds are late, there's a penalty that can be paid. But what we've done is essentially said that you need to pay the market interest rate. The market interest rate will be determined by the RBF as far as if there's any VAT refunds that are being paid late. Again, you see, I'm sure you have access to that. For example, with zero-rated duty on fiber optic cables, batteries and power systems for telecommunications, modems. Again, it follows a particular trend. We are very much focused on ITC, accessibility to ITC, affordability of ICT, ensuring that the capacity in the ICT sector is increased. So all of that is very much related to not just giving individual Fijians access to the services in their own homes and businesses, but also to hopefully attract, and we've got a new Trade Commissioner for Sydney. We think that there is a lot of opportunities in places like Australia and New Zealand for them to come and set up call centers, data processing units. ANZ has done it quite well. There are other smaller operations that do exist in Suva and a couple in Nandi, but we want to expand that. We have as mentioned in some other forums, we were told by Mind Pearl, who came and set up the shop here, that there were two major attractions for Fiji. Apparently we're in a very good time zone, and secondly, we apparently have neutral accents. So they don't have to spend zillions of dollars to get us to change our accents so people, some Australian downtown Queensland or Brisbane can understand us, or some American. So, which is obviously a natural advantage that we do have, and let's fully exploit that. The vehicles, again, we've provided a focus on the importation of new vehicles. We've reduced the duty, for example, from 15% to 5%. I mean, I must remind the business community, only a few years ago it was like 32%, and plus various other excise levies on top of that. So it's now 5%. We're still continuing with the zero rating of electric cars, but we have also recognized the fact that technology in what we call in Fiji hybrid cars has changed. So the hybrid cars that are the basic hybrid cars, which is the fuel and the motor that runs it, the duty on that is going slightly higher, but not on a percentage, but on a fixed amount, starting at $2,500. Yeah. Again, we have focused on NCDs, sugar sweetened drinks. It also captures artificial sweeteners too. Those of you may be thinking about that. That's also is captured, drinks that are artificially sweetened. And then, of course, tobacco and alcohol. We've also tidied up the Customs Tariff Act, which needs quite a bit of upgrading. In fact, the World Customs Authority from next year, 1st of Jan, and it's important for you to know this, is introducing completely set of new codes. And we will have to abide by that as one of the party to WCO. And we will need to bring that at short notice to Parliament. It's not changing the tariff rates per se, but the codes are all changing. So we have to be compliant with that, and you may need to tell your clients, or your business houses need to be aware of that. We hope to bring that in the October session in Parliament and get it approved then by way 51. Waiver of airport departure tax. As you know that we think that there is always a continuous opportunity to look at the tourism sector, become a lot more smarter. So we waived departure tax if somebody is transiting through Fiji for 72 hours or less. This gives the tourism sector, the airline industry, the ability to package Fiji. And many countries do that. Even for 12 hours they do packages if you're transiting. So this is up to 72 hours. We fly now to LA, San Francisco, China, Singapore, and of course down south to Australia and New Zealand. So there's a lot of transit passengers that we can take advantage of, and that packaging can be done through the waiver of the departure tax. Water resource tax. Water is probably more expensive in some countries than fuel, given the current fuel prices, oil prices, but the point of the matter is that it is a limited resource, and we have put a water resource tax, as you know, a few years ago, and that has been slightly increased based on the volume of extraction. Ladies and gentlemen, I think overall what we would like to highlight to you, and I'm sure the Minister, for example, for Agriculture will talk to you about this, there are a number of opportunities that exist in what may be considered non-traditional commercial areas. And agriculture is obviously one of the key ones. The fact now that you can get land leases or land period terms for up to 99 years, even for agricultural leases, provides a wonderful opportunity for investment in that area. I mean, the real reason why we've never seen widespread and large-scale investment in the agricultural sector in Fiji has been because traditionally leases have only been given up to 30 years. Some areas, of course, the dairy industry, they used to enjoy about 50-year leases. But many of the crown leases, many of the taukia leases for agricultural purposes were only for 30 years. So obviously banks did not traditionally participate in the agricultural sector. You had NBF because of, and then subsequently BSP because of the fact that BSP used to be NBF. They've kind of inherited the crop liens that they used to give out, and of course only FDB. But we think, and I'm sure the Minister is going to talk to you about this, the opportunities that exist in the agricultural sector. The fact that we have, somebody said to me, you people are so lucky in Fiji, you just throw something out in the open, seed, and it grows. And that is very, very true. You go to many countries where the nutrients in the soil have completely all died off, or it's so arid they cannot grow anything. Whereas in Fiji we have a different scenario, and we must take advantage of that. And the fact that there's also opportunity in the export sector too, given our ability now to freight goods very quickly. Some days we fly twice a day to Sydney and other places, so we have the opportunity to be able to market those crops. And there is a need, of course, both within government itself to recognize its potential and get our civil servants up to speed on that, but also the private sector to show interest. And we also like to urge the banks to try and mainstream banks to step into that area. We have, as you may have heard through the various parliamentary discussions we've had, we have ADB at the moment doing a review for us of the Fiji Development Bank. We think FDB needs to be revamped, go back to its sort of original mandate in terms of assisting in the various economic development sectors that we have identified. And of course, development or focus on development in different sectors should change over a period of time, because you need to handhold for a period of time, and once that sector develops, then you move on to the next one. So whether it's virgin coconut oil, or whether it is sugarcane farming, whether it's dalo farming, yangona farming, whatever the case may be, we need to have FDB come into that space, provide that. And traditionally, as we've seen in Fiji, that FDB comes into play, they upskill that particular sector, and then the mainstream banks pick up those clients. Similarly, we've seen also in the recent past where some of the tourism developments, where FDB has provided some sort of mezzanine funding, and then the mainstream banks have come and picked up on that, or even FNPF. So I think there's a scope for that, to re-look at FDB. We had, as you know, in one of the budget consultations, talked about another venture capital type of institution. We hope to, further that in the next 6 months or so. On the other hand, overall, we've looked at expanding the economic base. You'll see that in Head 50 we have provided for the development of a manufacturing plant in the Western Division. The idea behind that is to identify a site where we bring in all the services and offer that firstly to foreign investors who may partner up with local investors to set up, in particular manufacturing or ITC type based businesses in that particular area. Now, the reason why we're saying it should be in the Western Division is many of the manufacturers always traditionally require access to an international airport and also to a seaport. And of course, the Western Division does have that. Nosori is not fully international. You can't get the A330s landing there, nor do we get, for example, Korean Airways and others flying into that. So a couple of sites have been identified, and we're looking at developing those areas also. The other area I think it is worth mentioning, which is very important, is the focus on the development of Itauke land. We've already got 4 sites that have commenced works on it, and this gives greater accessibility to the landowners themselves to become direct landlords themselves, and also thereby giving them the level of confidence to venture into that area of the economy, but also giving them the level of confidence to make more land available for productive use. And it is better, and all of you and the others outside this room will be the beneficiaries of that. And it is a win-win situation for everybody. So ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just wanted to highlight some of the key areas of the budget. Our philosophy has been, as has been said on a number of occasions now, to ensure that we have consistency in our policies, and that gives a huge level of confidence in the business community. We don't want to chop and change. It could have been very easy for us to say, okay, let's reduce our deficit and let's smack a 2% cyclone levy in all business houses. But that would have been in a way counterproductive. In fact, some business houses actually suggested that to us, to do that. Probably not many of you in this room that would have suggested that, but there are some people who did suggest that. But we said that, as we've announced previously, we want to be consistent in our tax policies. We want to be able to give that level of confidence. There are many opportunities, I must say, that we have if we work together as a team. I'm not just saying that, for the sake of saying it. You see a $1 million allocation. The fact that Fiji Airways is actually doing well in the aviation space meant that when the CEO, the chairman of Fiji Airways, who were out recently at a IATA gathering, Boeing and Airbus itself offered to have this flight simulator school in Nairobi. They themselves, but more importantly, have actually offered to become shareholders in this company that we want to set up, the flight simulator school. Now that is a huge vote of confidence, not just in the airline, but also in the country. There is a recognition that infrastructure is there, right facilities are there, the right people are there, and that we also have the right level of connectivity. If we weren't flying to major hubs like Singapore and San Francisco and what have you, then they would not want to set up such a flying school. Because in order to set up a flying school, we actually need people to be able to access the flying school. And they access the flying school by actually flying to the country itself. So there's a great opportunity in that, and we hope that this flying school will be up and running fully by the end of next year. So again, there are other opportunities. Peter Macy mentioned sports tourism. There's a wonderful opportunity, of course, in sports tourism, given the fact that we already have a reputation as a sporting nation. And it is very, very unfortunate this was not thought of about 20 years ago. We should have facilities in the Western Division also. In Suva, of course, it has the bulk of the Fijian population. Nearly a third of it resides between Nassori and Lami. And again, you could see the stadium last week. It was filled to the brim. It was funny, in Parliament the other day, they were complaining about the Fiji International, the golf tournament. They say, we're spending $9 million allocation for a 5-day tournament or 4-day tournament. I said, yeah, but we made an allocation of $2 million for an 80-minute game. So, the fact is these allocations are made on the basis of the returns on the investment. That does not mean that, that we need to cut back on the budgets, but the idea is to strategically think about it. I think as business people need to recognize the fact there's a shortage of rooms in Suva. The room inventory in Suva does not match the capacity of Suva to be able to host international meets. Now, I'm not just talking about sporting events. The reason why we are 4-laning the road to Nassori Airport is because we want greater access and easier access and a lot more modern access to the capital of Fiji. International meetings are held here. Fiji is now, a leading nation in many areas, many respects, whether it's peacekeeping duties, whether it's a regional organization. UNESCO has agreed to the fact that Fiji will be a center for hosting various meetings and training sessions on our ability to access climate change funds. That in itself is a recognition that Fiji has the capacity to host that. So if we're going to have 50, 60 people coming out all the time to Fiji every given week, even at that sort of low figure amount, when they do travel to Fiji, they see a 4-lane road coming out of Nassori Airport and good street lighting, etc., they'll go back and talk about it. We've got a major event next year in Denarau, where we are hosting the Oceans Conference. In September of this year, RBF is hosting a financial inclusion forum, which is over 100 countries are attending, 500-600 people are attending that. Then we have a couple of months after that, we have the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organization conference being held in Denarau also, and that's again about 150 countries that will be attending that. We are in discussions with FNPF to build a conference facility. We put up our hand to host an ADB annual meeting. It's never been held in the Pacific. They generally get about 4,000 people that attend these meetings all at once. Room inventory does not exist in Suva. It does exist in the Western Division, and we've been in discussion with FNPF to build such a conference facilities in Momi, which is kind of halfway between Denarau and Intercon and the Fijian, etc. So we have a lot of opportunities in those areas, and we like to get companies, including FNPF and Fijian Holdings, to think about those opportunities that does exist. And if we are strategic in our thinking, and you partner with government in that sense, then I think there's room for growth for many, many years to come. The one advantage we do have, of course, is we have a population base of below the age of 40 who are about 70% of the population. So enormous opportunities in order to invest in them and of course invest in other infrastructure works. So with those introductory remarks, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the invitation. We look forward to the forum discussion. Nanga, thanks. Sorry, one thing. Part of the modernization process, many of you will be interested. We are also revising the laws of Fiji. You may have read through the press. Last time the laws of Fiji were consolidated was back in 1985. So for 30 years we've had something like, a few thousand pieces of amendments and new laws being introduced. So within a few weeks' time, you'll be able to, at a very relatively competitive price, be able to buy the laws of Fiji, and there'll be 20 volumes of this. It's for the first time. These are things that lawyers like Avendra Singh sitting in the back take for granted, and we in Fiji don't. It's paginated. It has annotations. It has the history of the legislation. It has the history of the amendments that have now been amended. You're also done by subject area. It also has how to use accountants, so you know how to use that. Also, the subsidiary legislation is built into that, and it also, for us, it not only modernizes our ability to access this, so you don't actually have to wait for every 10 years for this to be upgraded. The moment, for example, you have, this is, let me see, I'll pick one out, Moneylenders Act. So if there is an amendment to the Moneylenders Act Section 4, you'll get you'll get, once Parliament approves it, you'll get your notification, you subscribe, they'll send you the replacement page and they'll tell you what page to take out and the page to insert, and your law is updated. So it will be available online for a fee, but for Fijian citizens, and we want to do it sort of means test, they can access it for free, but the others can buy this and that'll be available in a few weeks' time. So I think this is also contributing for ease of business too. So people actually know, lawyers can't dupe people into charging astronomical fees, and they can know exactly how much fees they'll be paying. We found that people, in particular foreigners who come to Fiji, trademarks actually, for example, some trademark registration costs about $5, but we see lawyers charging people $2,000 or $3,000 for registration of a trademark. So at least people will get to know, they can go online and also make your work easier too. And we actually, I must admit, we are quite proud of this because it has been a long time coming, and this will be launched very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.